Okay, so for this, entry, I guess, I did actually want to have a topic. So the topic for this one is going to be kind of just going over like the first 6 months in my, new full time role with my current firm. So, um, I guess I like doing it kind of similar to how I was doing these before. List of questions, and I'll kind of just go through them as a prompt. Uh, and kind of see just what comes out to kind of just provoke my thoughts, I guess. A little bit of a jumbled intro, but that's okay. So, number one, what does great look like at 30, 60, and 90 days and at 6 months? So, I think for me it was a little bit different because I was coming off of an internship. Um, it I think it's very very different if you are just hired and have to kind of start then, um, from scratch, meeting everybody and doing all of that. I knew all the people I was working with. I knew what I was going to be doing. The only real transition for me was, um, now I was going to be in person at the office. So that was going to be new. That was a little different. Having to get used to that, doing the commute, moving to a whole new city. So all of that was different. But work wise, I think at 30 days, it was really. I think 30 days, you really, for me at least, I just really wanted to have like my routine down, and that part to like not really be thinking about anymore. Be very very comfortable. Um, because I mean that's a month, so you should be kind of in the swing of things then. I was already on projects that I'm still working on and things like that, so it was very kind of quick to adjust. It was more like all of the outside of work things that I was adjusting. So I think kind of nailing that stuff down so it didn't interfere with work was kind of my primary goal. 60 days, I wanted to start producing results as fast as possible, and we were kind of introducing some new things to the firm. Um, so wanted to be able to kind of start convincing people that that stuff was going to be valuable, and um, that we were really going to be able to add value and contribute as fast as possible. So that's about 8 weekly meetings in, and I think over that time period we were really able to do that. 90 days, kind of the same thing. Like 90 days, the first 60 days, I think we're really selling people on the potential of it. And then 90 days was when we really wanted to start, being able to have results. And then 6 months, which is, about where I'm at now, um, that is, where we kind of want to be wrapping up the project. So, honestly, on track for all of that, which is pretty cool. So, number two is which 1 to 3 metrics will I be judged on the most? Um, the metric that I would want to be judged on the most is revenue add to the firm. Because obviously, if you bring in money, you get paid more. And I like the work a lot. I love the people I work with. I love what I'm doing. I love the problems that I'm solving. But, also at the end of the day, if you're adding value, you want to be able to kind of see the reward for that. Uh, as cool as the job is, like getting paid for it is also really cool. So that's kind of the main thing that I would want to be judged on. I think that's, really what I am going to be judged on by the people who, make those type of decisions. I think, other people will judge me based on like what I'm able to do for them in terms of, the quantitative modeling and things like that I'll bring, or that I am bringing to different teams who have had existing setups and protocols and procedures and everything like that. Um, Being able to, augment what they do and make their lives easier or help them bring in more money or give them capabilities that they haven't had in the past. I think that that's another good one. And then the people within my team, uh, obviously just, you could go the whole like consistency route and, work ethic and things like that. And I think that that all kind of goes without saying, but, the last one is things that only really people in my team would understand. And that's, very, very like technical capabilities that we have added to the firm that weren't there previously in terms of like being able to process large amounts of data, doing it quickly, all under hardware constraints. So, things like that, I think, kind of the three different groups of people all have their different metrics. So, depending on what you want out of each one, and I say you, but I'm talking like generally and to me really, um, depending on what you want to get out of it the most from those different people. Like you have to know your audience, obviously. So number 3, what are the must-win projects this quarter and why? So next week, it's November 4th, we have our investment committee meeting. That's going to be an absolutely huge meeting, like probably the most important meeting in my entire career so far, because we will be implementing the like formalizing the procedure around the models that I've built. And that's going to be really cool. So that's, absolutely must win that. That's going to augment and enhance the existing project. I think it'll, be able to increase the quantity that we're already doing in terms of, the number of, individual items that we're able to process. I think that we're going to be able to open our own fund around this where we're actually buying assets and holding them. And then I think that we'll also be able to kind of sell this as a service. So, additional revenue streams there as well, which kind of goes back to number 2. So number 4, if I only did one thing exceptionally well in my first 90 days, what should it be? I would say produce results. That's like kind of the obvious one, I think. If you can produce that quickly, especially for me, I think that kind of fast tracked, getting into the meetings that I have been lucky enough to be in now and, talking with some of the people that I've been able to talk to. So, really cool to be able to do that. And I think that it was because I was able to produce, at least interesting results so quickly. So yeah, results obviously speak for themselves. So the faster that you can get to that point, the better, I think. Number 5, who are the true decision makers and who are the quiet influencers? I think it kind of depends on your role, but for me, we have a very flat organizational structure. So there are a couple very key decision makers. I would say the quiet influencers are not necessarily quiet, but it's like people that don't necessarily have decision making power, but they still, can kind of have a lot of sway over the project where, um, not even sway in terms of like them making decisions on, what to do or anything like that. But a lot of times it's, them adapting or adopting your solution or, kind of embracing it. So, and utilizing it, especially if it's, new to them or whatever. So it's almost like, the people that you're trying to help are, kind of an opposition in a way, not really an opposition because obviously you're all on the same team, but that's kind of the gist there. Number 6, what landmines have tripped up new hires before? Um, I can't really speak to that one too much, to be honest, because nobody has really tried to do what I'm doing specifically for the firm, um, which is a really cool spot to be in. I think that I've been avoiding those things pretty well. I think that people have wanted to do some things in the past. I don't know that some people have necessarily had the qualifications and the ability to do it. And I think that for one person that has, I don't know. I think people can kind of just get wrapped up in, or not wrapped up in, but kind of tripped up by doing other things, or um, I don't know. It kind of just I got very lucky, to be honest, to be able to be doing this stuff. And it's on the backs of like a lot of other people who kind of laid the foundation for this type of work to be done there. Um, so, to be honest, the main thing that I would say as far as like what has tripped up new, people who have wanted to do this in the past, really, it's the thing I would say would be timing. So number 7 is, what is the preferred communication cadence and format for updates? So I think like what I have done that has been extremely, advantageous in terms of like my career progression and being put on these projects and doing all of this stuff is I have tried to, obviously all the stakeholders and like the people that are on the other side of this that I'm doing these things for, they don't have the, they're finance people, they're bankers, they're non-technical people is really what I'm trying to get at. And, I think from the beginning, I have been very good about putting everything in their terms and communicating everything to them in a way that they're very familiar with. So, making slide decks, making, presentations, doing it that way, as opposed to like just making it very, very easy to grasp the things that I'm trying to communicate to them. So, communication isn't what you said, it's what the other person heard. And, I think that I didn't put too much thought into that originally, but I think kind of looking back, that was a very, smart move to kind of set the tone of that, where like I'm going to have a presentation every single week. It's always formatted the exact same. So you kind of know like, after 10 weeks or whatever, you really start to get in the rhythm of, okay, here's what we're looking for. Here's, the sections and everything. So, I think that the overall, I think the preferred communication cadence and format for updates is whatever is easiest for your audience to understand and digest. So number 8, what stakeholders can't be surprised and how early should I loop them in? To be honest, I'm not totally sure what that means. I guess like stakeholders that couldn't be surprised would be, in terms of like content, would be people that just know more than you. Like you're not going to surprise somebody who's better at, something that you do, by being able to do it, but you can surprise people who, like if you have a skill set that they don't and you're able to do things that they're not able to, you can surprise them with your ability to do it. I think the one thing that you can surprise everybody with is like work ethic and, speed and producing results like that. So that was number 8. Number 9, what current processes are sacred versus fair game to improve? So, that's kind of the thing with doing all of this stuff is, uh, especially like technical, like, if you're automating things or, augmenting manual processes. I think a lot of times people get very defensive because they are, um, rightly worried about being replaced or devalued or, whatever it is. Um, so as far as, sacred versus fair game, I think everything is fair game. Uh, I just think that you always have to recognize the need for like external, um, like you always need a guiding force, like I'm a numbers guy. I look at the numbers, I do the math and coding and all of that. But, there's always going to be a role for somebody with domain expertise who knows, the ins and outs of like what the numbers mean in the context and does this metric make sense with this or, whatever. Because I can apply those skills to, whatever I want to, but, at the end of the day, I don't have 40 plus years of financial experience. So, um, I think that everything is fair game. I think that thing, like the domain expertise and all of that, I wouldn't necessarily call it sacred. I would call it necessary. Um, so that was kind of interesting. It was interesting to see like how much people pushed back when they kind of felt threatened by some of this. So that was a little bit surprising. Um, Number 10, where is the team underwater right now? I don't know that we're necessarily underwater anywhere, but I do think that we are, um, I just think with predictive analytics and, things like that, that there are a lot of places that we can continue to improve. So, I don't know that it's a necessity to like get back above, like to get our heads above water, but I do think that there are still massive opportunities to kind of apply these things and see what we can do. Number 11, what's the customer user pain we're closest to solving, and how can I see it firsthand? Um, yeah, kind of the same thing that we've been talking about, but really just the ability to kind of take what we're already doing, because a lot of it is manual, a lot of it is, it's just like we're a fundamental shop now, and if we can kind of take these tools that I'm working on introducing and really really apply them and maximize them and get the most that we can out of them, I think that we'll be able to kind of improve our performance even more. Um, so I think that the biggest like user customer pain is just uh, the and they might not even know it, but the like not having adopted all of those things yet. Number 12, which docs and dashboards are the source of truth? I mean, it kind of depends on what, you know, who's using them. So I'm going to skip that one. I don't think that one's super applicable. Number 13, what decisions can I make solo versus which need alignment? I think most of my decisions are made solo in terms of, my own individual work. But alignment, I think, goes back to, uh, the domain expertise and the industry knowledge and experience. So just to give kind of an example on that, I was working with, um, time series data, and it was on a daily frequency. So I made a prediction for the next day and sent it out. And, one of the senior guys got back to me and he was like, "Hey, this would be unheard of. Like um, this would never be this high. Like, how is this, where did this prediction come from?" And I was like, "What do you mean it would never be this high? Look at the last, 4 days. It's been that high or higher every time." And, again, this was daily time series data. And he says it's daily time series data, but it's month to date. So it's the month to date number, but it's updated daily. So it was just, and I was kind of just at the moment, I was like, why would you not tell me that? Like, how am I supposed to know that? But so it's just things like that where, you got to make sure that like, I never would have known that otherwise. Um, so, just things like that, that, really that's where the alignment comes in, is making sure you know what you're looking at. 14, what is the appetite for risk this quarter? Speed versus certainty. I think that the appetite for risk the last, 2 or 3 quarters really has been, or 2 quarters at least, has been, it's funny, like the people who are in charge of this always want their cake and to eat it too. So, I think that everybody would choose certainty over speed, but, if they can get speed too, they're going to ask for it. So, next quarter, I think, is going to be much more certainty focused, because, it's kind of like this model that we're about to deploy is pretty much done. So certainty before we like really start to put money behind it, I think is going to be big. 15, if we had to cut 20% of our work, what would go and what must remain? I think probably like, working on one model at a time would be the obvious answer. Things would take longer, but, if we had to cut our workload by 20%, then that's, the only way to do it really. 16, who should I shadow in my first 2 weeks? So who did I shadow? So I guess, I had kind of like through my internship and everything gotten a pretty good understanding of how the firm worked and what different people were doing and all of that. So, I don't know, shadowing in terms of like what I was doing specifically, there wasn't really anybody who was doing exactly what I was doing, for me to shadow. So I was kind of more shadowing people like, in terms of like their role in an organization, or like how they handled themselves within the firm, or, just kind of things like that, like how they operated within meetings, kind of just like how to operate within the firm was really what I was looking for. What skills or gaps should I intentionally level up by month 3? I think by month 3, you just want to be at the point of, where people kind of know what you do and like what you can do for them, and kind of your value add, so they know like if they need this, they can go to you, like you're the person for something. So that's really where I tried to get to. 18, how do promotions and raises actually happen here? We're going to find out pretty soon, I hope. What does managing up look like for you? What keeps you up at night? I think managing up is pretty interesting. I think just being clear about like what you need, and what you're able to do, and if you're producing results, then the people above you should have no problem like helping you out, or giving you what you need to get the job done. Because if all of a sudden, like if you're producing and then you're not, and it's on them, like nobody wants that. So, I wouldn't necessarily say that's what keeps me up at night. And I think it depends on the person. It depends on like how closely you work with them too. If you're not super close with them, then, it's a little bit harder. You just need to be very, very good about communicating your value. So number 20, where are basic automation or templates that would save hours? Uh, Most places in the firm, to be honest. 21. What cross-functional relationships will matter most to my success? Unfortunately, IT, very, very dependent on them. And I mean, really everybody. Um, like all the finance people who, kind of don't necessarily have a massive understanding of, or a really deep understanding of what, we're trying to do for them. Just managing unrealistic expectations and things like that. Um, so, yeah, I guess there's just a couple more, so we could do those. What's the best way to disagree without creating drama? For me, that's always just been make a better argument. Like if you can provide better results or make it just like if you can be more convincing in like if your argument stands up against criticism, against whatever, then, there's no real like disagreement. And I guess that's a very like analytical way to look at it. Um, it's a little bit different if you're dealing with like non-concrete, non-black and white things. Um, but even then, I think results still kind of speak for themselves. And, if you kind of build up that track record, people are going to see you as right more often than not. So, and then you just got to figure out like why you're having disagreements, what are they over? But I think for the most part, like, at least in like a very high performing industry like finance, especially quantitative finance, I mean, my experience is that people aren't too dramatic. Like everybody's kind of there for the same reason. Everybody is, really good at what they do. So, everybody kind of just wants to, to maximize their performance. So, if you're able to do that, everybody kind of eventually gets on board. 23, which recurring meetings are high signal versus skippable? That's actually a good question. I think that there are meetings that kind of just like make you feel important, and then there's other meetings that make you seem important or like where you're actually needed and can contribute and things like that. Those meetings are much more, pressing to be in, and those are the ones that I would really want to focus on trying to get in. Skippable are just ones that like they're just not going to help you move forward in any way. So yeah, usually try to kind of miss out on those. Like we had a meeting today where the like one of our interns was kind of presenting, an update on his project, and it just, it was interesting to know. I wasn't on it, but it was, like his project is kind of interesting. So just kind of, just like things like that. Like it wasn't really going to do anything for me, and I had other stuff I needed to do. So, but if there's a meeting where like, there, I'll kind of break that down a little bit more. I think there's the meetings where the little things matter, and then there's a meeting where there are no little things, if that makes sense. So, yeah, kind of being able to like make that delineation is very important. 24, what would make you confidently say at month 6 this hire changed our trajectory? I think I'm kind of there, to be honest. We've added a lot of new capability to the firm. I think that we're able to do a lot of new things that we weren't able to do before. We have a lot of pipelines and infrastructure built now to where, we're able to handle massive amounts of data and do, advanced data science and predictive analytics and machine learning and all of that on these huge data sets. So, I think that kind of is like a huge first step into kind of moving our trajectory into much more of a quantitative direction. So, I think that's we're definitely there. Last one, 25. What should I stop, start, continue doing based on first impressions? Um, Most of it is just going to be continue. Like I think continuing to be consistent, continuing to produce results, continuing to communicate value. Um, all of those things I think are just kind of no brainers, to be honest, in my opinion. Um, as far as like stopping and starting, I don't know that there's anything that I like really want to get away from. I think I'm pretty wise with my time. Uh, as far as starting, really it's kind of an outside of work thing, but this is, I think, helpful to me. Um, so, starting to kind of do these more, I guess that's more of a continue thing, but yeah. All right. Well, that's kind of going to wrap it up. I think that's a good, just pen to paper type of thing for the first 6 months of working full time. My voice is kind of recovering. I've been sick the last week or so, um, so hopefully that doesn't sound too bad. But yeah, I think that's kind of a good update as far as where I'm at with the first 6 months of the job. So